What's up, my podcast followers? This is a bite-sized short podcast episode that's going to discuss my reflections and thoughts and insights from my interview with Jeremy Jong. Just as a quick recap, we did a podcast interview, which will be posted on my show by now. And I interviewed him. He's the founder of Fearless Asian Man. Fearless Asian Men, that is, plural. And he has built quite a strong Facebook following on his Facebook group. He also has a website and his own podcast where I was interviewed on. Now, with his Facebook group, I highly recommend it. I've been a member of a few Asian success, self-development groups on Facebook over the years, and many of these groups have a lot of bitter Asian American men, and it wasn't helpful, it wasn't productive, so I left those groups. Or they just had no values or no real set of ethical, cultural values to the group, and I really didn't like that. Some of them were willing to cheat, lie, steal other people's girlfriends, do whatever they wanted, and that didn't really vibe well with me. So, but this group has probably been the best I've found. I was very surprised by it so far. Everyone's into honest, ethical, positive improvement, and so it's incredible. And there's some people in there who are actually doing really well. Like, there's some people in there who are like so much younger than me, and yet their style, their fashion, their fitness is like 2 times better than I am now, even though they're that young. I mean, I was a complete mess, skinny, no fashion sense, hoodies, but some of these people are on a great path. So, great group. I mean, if you just search fearlessasianmen.com, you can find them. But basically, I want to talk about one big thing that I learned from his podcast that I don't think gets enough light. No one really discusses this enough. And it's not just an Asian problem. I think a lot of people have this problem. So he discussed how when he was in college, he heard the sounds of other people getting ready to go out and party on Thursday nights when he was in his college dorm. And that caused all sorts of negative thoughts in his head because he was wondering why he wasn't invited, and it caused him to conclude with this very limited and narrow conclusion that he was ugly, and that's why no girls would like him, and that's why no one invited him to these parties. And I realized I had a very similar experience, not the exact same conclusions or thoughts, but very similar sort of problem that arose that caused me to think very toxically and have very limiting beliefs that weren't true from my own experience in college dorms. And I thought many other people might have the same situation. And maybe even if you don't, you know others who do, or you may have children one day who do, and it's going to cause huge problems. So it's good to really understand this from a healthy perspective, and so that you can communicate this to yourself or others. So for me, when I was a freshman, I had the same problem. I would hyper focus and hear all these sounds of people. Sometimes it'd take them an hour to get ready. Sometimes it was just like them talking and chatting and getting excited to go to some mysterious party that I wasn't invited to, but I could hear it all while I was in my dorm, just not having much to do. Sure, I had some homework, but not that much homework. And it was one of the worst environments for me to study because I heard all this, or all around me was this noise of people getting so excited to go to something that I wasn't invited to, and they were, and pretty girls were going to be there, and I wasn't invited. So it caused, the mystery made it even worse, because then I would sit there and wonder, oh, how amazing is this party going to be? I bet there's a bunch of super hot girls there and I'm not invited, and I have, no experience with this, and it just sucks. And I would just get into this downward spiral, and it would cause a lot of pain and frustration. And then when you compound that on, this is really the kicker. thanks to the modern era of social media, I would go onto YouTube or Instagram and get this very vastly, blown up idea of what an American party is like. Isn't that ironic? There's foreigners who get these wildly unrealistic pictures of how awesome an American party is like based off these movies with high budgets or TV shows or porn. And I was an American, but I got the same blown up proportion simply by not being invited to these things. And I think the biggest issue, and this is really the thing that I should have fixed, that you can consciously work to control, is shaping my environment and, more importantly, switching where I focus. Because looking back, maybe the people who were invited to those parties, they maybe consisted of 5% of my dorm hall. On my floor alone, there's maybe like 4 or 5 people who are going to these parties every week on Fridays. And then the rest of my dorm floor was like empty. Like they were not there, or they were there and they were nerds like me and they're just having a ball playing video games or board games and not worrying about this. So I was letting this get to my head and forgetting about the 95% of other people. And this happens all the time. And I'm sure it does for many other people. You hyper-focus on that one guy or girl or group of girls on Instagram who seem to have it all, that body, that lifestyle, not realizing that they're in the top 1% of 1%. And all the people around you are in worse shape than you, but you're beating yourself up. And you think that once you get to that level, you'll be happy. When in reality, there's people who are more poor, who have worse bodies than you, that are happy. So it's one of those things that you really have to control, because this happiness and pleasure is within your reach right now, but you are causing yourself all this pain and suffering because you're placing this unnecessary focus on what you don't have. And that's something I wish I told myself and really understood and executed on many, many years ago. So it caused a lot of frustration. I think this is something that's huge that I recommend everyone kind of understand and really work on. And you know what else? I whine about this way too much. And one really cool guy who was not super cool in the sense of being cool or looking cool. He was pretty ordinary, kind of nerdy. He was kind enough to invite me to a party. And this guy was not some super stud, not super popular, but for some reason, like, he had access to this party he was invited to, and he was kind enough to invite me. And the party wasn't even that great. It was in this small room, and there's a bunch of alcohol on the table, which I didn't like the taste of. And then, a bunch of girls who thought they were too cool, to talk to me. And I tried to talk to like 2 of them, and they gave me the cold shoulder. And that was it. Like, it was a really small room. I even had to pay like $20 to get in, but it felt exclusive for some reason. And so, when you're a small, young kid, that's what was cool. And I forgot about that. I hyper-focused on the hundreds of parties I was missing out on and totally forgot about that and wasn't as thankful as I should have been to that one friend who could have easily just said I was annoying and not invited me to a party. So really, I really have to change my mindset, and I've worked on that, and I think you can too. Thanks for listening. Hit that subscribe.